From looming mountainscapes whose twisting trails are supposedly wandered by restless spirits resulting from brutal accidents that transpired there long ago, to weathered schoolhouses whose halls are stalked by malevolent presences that have caused bodily harm to the living on numerous occasions. Are you sure you're ready to brave our list of picks for some of the most chillingly haunted places in Alberta? Number 5. The Princess Theatre. The Princess Theatre, located off of 82nd Avenue Northwest in the old Strathcona neighborhood of Edmonton in Alberta, is a prominent two-screen art house cinema boasting the title of being the city's eldest surviving theatre venue that was recognized from the time of its construction as the first marble-faced building in all of Western Canada. Historically, on March 8th of 1915, the Princess would open its doors as a single-screen cinema toting commercial and residential space, and would include a full basement, second-floor apartments, a full third floor, and, of course, theater space. Unfortunately, through the mid-1950s, the popularization of the television would result in a decline in business. In 1958, the theater was forced to close its doors. From 58 to 70, it would offer its bounds to retail ventures, and from 1970 to 1976, it would transform itself into an adult theater, which would feature mainstream pornographic films. From 1978 to 1996, the Princess would operate as a repertory, after which it would act as a first-run theater, and from 1998 to 2016, operations would be managed under Magic Lantern Theaters, before the site was sold to Plaza Entertainment, headed under Michael Brar, who continues to hold ownership to date. Sadly, as of 2022, this old hall is once again up for sale or lease, and while its future is quite uncertain, we can all hope an entrepreneur possessing vision can eventually breathe some life back into its dormant bones. From early into its existence, the Princess Theatre has been surrounded by one particularly chilling legend involving its infamous resident ghost. As this story goes, through the 1920s, when the theater was forced to open up additional rental space on its upper and lower floors, a young bride-to-be would rent out one such room. Tragically, it's told that on her wedding day, her fiancé left her, resulting in her taking her own life by way of hanging, and in the hotel staff discovering her body still swinging, clad in her gorgeous wedding gown, the very next day. Over the years, what's now more commonly called the ghost of the Princess Theatre has been known to manifest as a striking young woman, clad in a beautiful white dress, who's usually spied ascending the stairs, wandering the halls, or hovering just over the projection room. Number 4. The historic McKay Avenue School Archives and Museum. The historic McKay Avenue School Archives and Museum, located off of 99th Avenue in Edmonton, Alberta, is a prominent structure boasting the title of being the oldest brick building in the whole of the province. Historically, in 1881, an early one-room schoolhouse was constructed on lands donated by the Hudson's Bay Company. By 1900, amidst Edmonton's rapid expansion, the community would soon realize a need for a larger school space, and in 1904, construction of our current building was started adjacent to the original, and was completed by 1905, on the same day the province of Alberta entered Confederation. In 1906, and again in 1907, the Legislative Assembly of Alberta would make use of the McKay Avenue School for two of the first legislative assemblies of Alberta, during which time Edmonton was selected as provincial capital, the University of Alberta was founded, the provincial courts established, and bills were passed in support of the provision of charters of a handful of major railway companies. This aged school would serve until 1983, when it was eventually no longer needed, and in the present, the campus sits as a provincial and municipal historic resource, which houses the Edmonton Public School Board's archives and museum. In more recent times, the McKay Avenue School has picked up a more sinister reputation for the rampant supernatural phenomena experienced on site, and those who have frequented its bounds have reported objects including furniture sighted moving on their own, disembodied footsteps, voices, groaning, and even growling, and the feelings of being watched, followed, grabbed, or disturbingly choked by a presence unseen. Several informal investigations of the expanse have yielded chilling EVPs, abnormal EMF fluctuations, and strange silhouettes captured on film, while others have reported faucets that turn on by themselves and doors that slam shut at random, often trapping the living within certain rooms. The most famous legend surrounding this weathered hall of learning tells that in 1912, a construction worker named Peter fell from a third-floor window to his death during a renovation, leaving his restless spirit to wander the property. While no evidence of this death has ever been uncovered, the story has persisted into modern times, as do reports of run-ins with a manifestation in an old-timey work uniform. Number 3. The Deane House. The Deane House, located off of 9th Avenue Southeast out of Calgary in Alberta, is a historic abode turned dining venue that's orientation in Inglewood at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow Rivers has it placed in the heart of Blackfoot territory. Historically, land now holding the house would originally act as a meeting place for tribes native to the region for thousands of years, with surrounding wilds utilized for hunting, fishing, and more, while nearby shallows made for much easier crossing of the river. In 1875, Fort Calgary was established as a Northwest Mounted Police outpost, purposed to intervene in the American rum and whiskey trade, as well as to form bonds with those locals native to the lands. In 1906, the Deane House was constructed under Captain Richard Burton Deane, the final Northwest Mounted Police Superintendent in Calgary, and in 1929, the abode would be moved across the river to its current location, where, for a time, it would serve as a boarding house and later as an art gallery, before its 2015 redevelopment under the Fort Calgary Historic Preservation Society. Most recently, in 2016, the site would welcome the addition of its restaurant, which remains open into the present, offering seasonal menus, its iconic Sunday supper club, the Rosé and Croquet Garden Party, and a popular Oyster Thursdays. Chillingly, the Deane House has seemingly been saturated in tragedy since its development. Originally, Captain Richard Deane would plan the structure for his wife, Martha, who sadly would die before its completion. Additionally, in 1933, a 14-year-old boy would take his own life in the attic. In 1952, a tenant would murder his wife before doing away with himself, and local legends claim his turbulent past has left a series of supernatural scars across the property, with those frequenting its bounds telling of an antique piano that plays itself, of phantom wafts of cigar smoke, and of encounters with a range of full-bodied apparitions that also have a habit of turning up in the backgrounds of photography. In the attic, despite multiple cleaning attempts, bloodstains from the aforementioned 1933 incident remain, and the adjacent closet door has a habit of unlocking and opening itself spontaneously, while in other rooms, staff have told of run-ins with dark manifestations that are missing everything below their knees, and that always float down the staircase before fading away. Lastly, and reported across the whole of the property, are disembodied voices and footsteps heard from empty spaces, instances of old, disconnected phones ringing inexplicably, and encounters with the manifestations of a native man in ancient garb who, on one occasion, was documented warning a visitor that she should not be there and that she was standing on sacred land. Number 2. Turtle Mountain. Turtle Mountain, also known as the Frank Slide, is the iconic site of a tremendous rock slide that buried part of the mining town of Frank out of Alberta, that's easily recognized as one of the largest landslides in the history of Canada, as well as its absolute deadliest. Historically, in 1901, the community of Frank was founded at the base of Turtle Mountain, near a coal strike that had been uncovered the previous year, and the town would derive its moniker after Henry Frank, who, alongside Samuel Guibault, was an owning interest in the Canadian-American Coal and Coke Company, around whose mine the town was formed. By April of 1903, Frank's populace had reached around 600, with its bounds even featuring 4 different hotels and a 2-story schoolhouse. Sadly, at 4:10 on the morning of April 29th in 1903, 121 million tons of limestone would cascade down from the peak of Turtle Mountain and would smash onto the sleeping village below. While a good bulk of the town did survive, the slide would result in the destruction of 7 cottages, of a handful of businesses, of the town's cemetery, cemetery, of a good 2-kilometer stretch of road and adjacent rail line, and of all of the mine's buildings, and also in the deaths of an estimated 70 to 90, whose bodies remain trapped in the rubble to this day. After a period of relocation due to safety concerns, Frank would soldier on, with the site of the slide becoming a popular tourist destination within days, and remaining so into the present. Today, Frank hosts a humble populace of just 200, and continues to welcome waves of annual visitors seeking to observe the visible results of the deadly tumble. While not exactly paranormal in nature, for the longest time a local legend held that the original Union Bank of Canada in Frank had been covered up in the disaster, with nearly $500,000 inside, and despite the fact that the bank would eventually reject this claim, even going so far as to provide documentation that proved it had in fact not only survived the slide, but it also retained the same property until the older building's demolition in 1911, this did nothing to dissuade eager treasure hunters, and in 1924, through the construction of the nearby pass, road crews were actually required to work under police supervision, as it was still widely believed they might turn up some remnant of what may have ultimately been nothing more than a fable. Chillingly, local legend also paints the whole of the slide zone and surrounding areas as haunted by the ghosts of the many who were covered up so long ago. Some, disturbingly, who may have even still been alive below feet of rock and earth, while tourists walked above them, oblivious to their desperate cries. And those frequenting Turtle Mountain have reported extreme cold spots on warm days, the constant feelings of being watched or surrounded by presences unseen, and encounters with a range of full-bodied apparitions, some bearing grievous injuries, and most looking confused, likely due to the manner in which they met their sudden fates. Number 1. The Fairmont, Banff Springs. The Fairmont Banff Springs, or more affectionately, the Banff Springs Hotel, and located off of Spray Avenue out of Banff in Alberta, is a prominent lodging recognized as one of the earliest Grand Railway hotels in the whole of Canada. Historically, original portions of this prestigious inn were completed under the Canadian Pacific Railway by 1888. In 1911, construction on newer portions that would come to act as our current hotel was started, and by 1914, the site's tower had been finished. In 1926, the original 1888 section of the hotel would burn to the ground in a fire, after which, from 1927 to 1928, the current standing main portion was constructed in its stead. Even in its refashioned state, the hotel would lack certain amenities based purely off of the era of its construction, and would only be able to operate through the warmer months. However, in 1968, it would welcome the addition of winterization and heating, allowing for it to remain open year-round. In 2001, Canadian Pacific Hotels would change their name to Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, and in 2006, the site was sold to Oxford Properties, with Fairmont continuing management of its operations. The Banff Springs Hotel remains in operation into the present, offering 757 guest rooms and suites, a full market, bowling alley, ample event space, dining options, tennis courts, a pool and spa, and a golf course. While nothing has been officially confirmed, this aged lodging is surrounded in a number of local fables, ranging from tales of grisly murders to tragic suicides, to accidents, rituals, and everything in between. And those frequenting its bounds have reported extreme cold spots felt on hot days, disembodied footsteps, voices, and commotions heard from vacant rooms, and doors that open and close on their own even when they were left locked. Many have told of objects sighted moving around on their own, or of the feelings of being watched or followed by a presence unseen, while overnight guests have been sent running from their rooms in terror after the pillows or blankets were literally ripped from their beds, or their bodies shoved to the floor by an invisible force. Additionally, the Fairmont Banff Springs is surrounded by 3 prominent legends that have been passed through generations. The first tells of a bride through the 1920s who on her wedding day tripped down the hotel's marble stair, resulting in her death, after which her veiled ghostly form has been documented on numerous occasions by both staff and guests, either traversing the staircase or dancing alone in the ballroom. A second tale tells that long ago, a man murdered his wife and daughter before taking his own life in the former room 873, which has since supposedly been remodeled into suite space, and that guests staying in said room have since reported ghostly screams heard through the night and the discovering of bloodied handprints on the mirror in the morning. A final fable intertwines with history to tell of Sam Macaulay, the hotel's dutiful head bellman through the 1960s and 70s, whose spirit, it's claimed, returned to the place he so loved in life following his passing in 75. Sam's ghost, who has both been sighted within his old office, which is now a guest room, as well as across hotel grounds, is said to be a friendly presence and has even been known to assist visitors to their rooms or help unsuspecting staff members with small tasks before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Taking its fascinating history and wealth of associated lore and purports of encounters with the otherworldly into account, we felt Fairmont Banff Springs was the perfect choice as the most haunted place in Alberta. Thanks for joining us for our picks for some of the most haunted places in Alberta. If you enjoyed our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with all of your friends. We'll catch you next time.